What was the best moment you've seen where the real world hit a spoiled rich kid? Story 1. I grew up with rich kids and still keep in touch with a few of them. One guy's father owned the most prestigious law firm in town. He said his life changed the moment he called his father from jail the second time it happened. His father said, "Well, sorry to hear you got arrested. Good luck." Then hung up. He said getting locked back into his cell was the singular moment that completely turned his life around. Story 2. I knew a guy in high school who bragged that he didn't have to pay attention in school because get this, his grandfather was a vice president of the corporation that supplied the cardboard for cereal boxes for General Mills. Real gravy train, you know. Last I checked, he has since deleted Facebook. He was still working at Best Buy 5 years after high school. Same job he had while at school. Story 3. Local business owner puts son through college and more. When kid graduates with multiple degrees, dad decides to retire and turn over business to son. Son brings college cronies on board, has management all wear white cowboy hat, and drive white pickups, begins revamping business. Dad comes out of retirement, pronto gets rid of son and cronies. Years later, bankrolls son's run for state rep. The son lost. Dad dies and leaves business to daughter. Story 4. Saw a college guy with a ridiculously expensive car, can't remember the model rear end this woman, who drove an absolute beater. Her car was definitely totaled, and his wasn't looking that hot either. He got out and started screaming at this woman. She was in tears, and he kept telling her that she was going to pay for it. When the cops came, I saw each of them give their statements. After that, me and like 10 other people came forward and gave our witness statements. It sounded like each and every one of us put complete fault on him, which was the truth. When the cops went back to him, I saw his face just sink. He probably told them it was her fault and just found out that two handfuls of people just confirmed that he's full of crap. I've never seen that many witnesses stick around for a simple traffic accident. I think the other people felt the same way I did. That kid was a jerk and should be punished for what he did. Story 5. Dad buys a rich kid a Mercedes. It was pinkish salmon colored, so the kid beat about it. Dad took it away, sold it, and never bought him another car. Rich brat had to buy his own. Story 6. Somewhat distant relative spent all of his university years and 20s partying hard. With a 100 to 120K allowance, his rich company-owning father gave him each year. He'd travel the world each year, going to Bali, Thailand, Europe. Every year Oktoberfest, just rampaging. At 32 or so, he decided to settle in upscale ski resort area of the U.S. and open a business with his hot gold digger fiancée. When he went to transfer his money to his U.S. bank account, he noticed it only came to a few $1,000s. He angrily asked the bank worker why she hadn't transferred the entire amount. Just to be told that was. His father had cut him off without saying anything, and he just hadn't noticed. Absolute flatline. Story 7. When I was a teenager, my sister and I saw through our windows that there were two guys getting into her car. We ran downstairs as fast as possible and caught them in the act. One managed to run away, but the other one froze and didn't run away. He couldn't have been much older than me. My sister called the cops, and the kid kept looking at us trying to find a way to escape. My sister said, "Run if you want. My brother will catch you." The cops came, and so did his parents. His mom drove a freaking amazing car, and the lady looked furious and sad. She was dressed really nice and looked like she was pretty successful. As soon as she got out, she began yelling, "Why we give you everything? You have everything? Why would you try and steal? Don't we give you enough?" The kid just seemed to shrink and get smaller. I don't get it, freaking jerk. I hope he turned his life around and began to be around better people. Story 8. In a country with high alcohol taxation. Rich kids enter a pub, like 10, 12 of them, throw a card at the bartender demanding shots. "What would y'all like? Whatever LOL dad is paying." Bartender pours double JW blues for all the brats and some randoms that they treated. Brat with the card had tears in his eyes when the tab came in. Dad's gonna kill me. I did enjoy the free whiskey, though. Story 9. I went to a very rich, predominantly white Catholic high school. One moment I remember was the wind absolutely being taken out of a girl's sails. When I explained to her why our school dominated the area's skiing, golf, and equestrian competitions, but never anything else. For a lot of kids in that school, the moment they learned they were rich was the moment they learned that most girls don't have their own horses. Story 10. I went to a school with a kid who always had a new fancy car or truck, because his dad owned one of the biggest construction companies in the area. This kid was a major douche and double/triple parked his big trucks all the time. Once he got some sort of fast, fancy car and went over 110 miles per hour and was getting chased by state police. He had friends in the car that were telling him to stop and slow down, but he wouldn't. I believe he was also drunk, but he ended up crashing into a business doing a ton of damage. He got hit with 3 to 4 felonies. Driving over 100 miles per hour is a crime in most states, and he got multiple kidnapping charges because the passengers were freaking out. Dude never came back to school, and I have no clue what he's doing now. Edit 1, to clarify, it was on normal street roads, not the freeway/highway. Edit 2, my bad, not a felony for driving fast, but for the attempted kidnapping. Story 11, rich guy in our college dorm thought he was untouchable because his dad was some NFL player from the 90s and had not blown all of his money yet. He would get freshman girls blackout drunk and then film himself banging them and show all of his buddies the next day or so. Well, one buddy was not as close as he thought and went to the RA, who then went to the campus police, who then went to the real police. It was a fun night watching the parking lot fill up with the bored cops on duty that night and haul his butt out of the dorms while they went and gathered his evidence. Story 12. There was a kid in my school/class who was a trust fund baby, and he acted like it. He was picking on people one day, just talking unnecessary poop, and he called a girl a cow. She was overweight. He then got punched by a special education kid in class, and then when he contemplated retaliating against the special education kid, he then got punched by another student who was not special needs. He did not contemplate punching him. Story 13. I knew one who apparently couldn't fathom how people live on a budget. We used to hang out a lot at her insistence. But she liked to eat at expensive places, whereas I would have no issues having my meals somewhere cheaper. However, she kept pouting and insisting I stay. I said I couldn't unless she wanted to spot me. She didn't. I then walked her through the math and showed her the cost of my meals with her every day totaled my entire wage for the month. She didn't stop pouting, but from then on I could eat by myself in peace. Story 14. When I was a teenager, my sister and I saw through our windows that there were 2 guys getting into her car. We ran downstairs as fast as possible and caught them in the act. One managed to run away, but the other one froze and didn't run away. He couldn't have been much older than me. My sister called the cops, and the kid kept looking at us trying to find a way to escape. My sister said, "Run if you want, my brother will catch you." The cops came, and so did his parents. His mom drove a freaking amazing car, and the lady looked furious and sad. She was dressed really nice and looked like she was pretty successful. As soon as she got out, she began yelling, "Why we give you everything, you have everything. Why would you try and steal? Don't we give you enough?" The kid just seemed to shrink and get smaller. I don't get it freaking a hole. I hope he turned his life around and began to be around better people. Story 15. I'm trying to be a better man and not take delight in anyone's misfortune. But rich kid in my high school totaled his pickup truck. Got upset when parents wouldn't replace it, so purposefully crashed his twin brother's pickup, because if he couldn't have one, neither could he. Not to mention all the legal stuff that I'm sure was the fallout from doing that. Anyway, kid disappeared. I assumed he went to jail or some equivalent. Found out recently that, no, he didn't actually. His parents literally disowned him, like with paperwork and everything, and sent him on his way to fend for himself. I have no idea how life turned out for him. Story 16. I had a roommate my freshman year of college that came from an incredibly rich oil family from the Middle East. I remember waking up one morning and going to the kitchen and seeing him try to eat eggs and toast he had just prepared himself. He asked me how I normally prepare fried eggs because it tasted really crunchy. Turns out he just cracked the egg whole into the pan and prepared it shell and all. I couldn't stop laughing, but felt really bad for the dude. Story 17. My best moment was when I got hired by a pair of Woodside, California parents to transition their horrible 18-year-old into the realities of real life, something that evaded both of them. My first action was to take away his platinum, limitless credit cards. He threw a tantrum that lasted several days. "Where am I going to get money? Get a job. My parents will fire you." They didn't. When he realized that boundaries and budgets had been set in stone and that he not only had to pay the bills, the rent, but taxes too, he headed straight to college to wait out the next 4 years. He is still a little jerk, but at least he has a job and an education now. Story 18. One of my college roommates told his parents the trip we were planning that they were paying for was $400 more expensive than it was so he could buy a really nice bong. In addition, they basically paid for everything he wanted. He had their credit card and ordered food on it at least once daily. He would also make regular $50 purchases off of the card. Long story short, they found out he lied about the cost of the trip. For whatever reason, they still paid for it and let him go. But after the trip, he could not use their card anymore. This dude acted like he lived the hardest life of all time after, but eventually he sucked it up. He actually acts way less entitled now. It ended up having a lasting positive effect for him, even though he won't admit it. Story 19. While working in a casino here in Vegas, a herd of girls came to my window, and one proceeded to tell me about her great birthday party itinerary that her dad had paid for her 18th birthday, with no adult in the party, just a bunch of teenage girls out in Vegas. None of them could even do anything because they weren't 21. I couldn't even check them into their reservation. They started yelling and screaming at me. I calmly call security, and security tells them they can either go play in the arcade or leave and try to find a hotel off the strip that will take them in without being 21. The anger turns to tears. The security guard is unmoved. Story 20. No joke here. Back in high school 90s, this kid got a brand new Chevy Camaro. I had an old 80s Pontiac Phoenix that had these straight six. It was by far not a racing car, but this tool was just looking to brag at what he got compared to the busted cars we got. About 2 days later, while we were waiting at a stoplight, this idiot tries to race us as I'm in my car, and I pull up with my friends. He does so by revving it really loud and tries to do a burnout. Mind you, the light was red and the roads were not wet, so he managed to get a tiny burnout going, some smoke and whatnot, when his tires did catch traction. He went barreling into the intersection and smashed the car of the wife of one of the very few cops in my small city. Needless to say, that did not work out for him very well. This is peak play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Story 21. A kid from my high school came from a very well-known family that was very well involved in politics. He slacked off in school and was mostly a condescending jerk for years. After graduation, he didn't really do anything, but eventually decided to run for office, as he had the same name as his father. He won easily because people didn't realize it was the kid. As a state rep, he posted on Facebook about enjoying his women battered rather than plain, and asking to join the Black Caucus because he likes hip-hop. He also dropped a loaded gun on the floor in the middle of a session after fighting for the right to carry a gun in the State House as a responsible gun owner. He kept getting elected despite these issues because his family was well connected, and he had a dedicated following from the same political groups. After 6 years in office, he gets busted for soliciting from a minor over the internet. When they arrest him for that, they also discover he's been dealing drugs. The worst part is his family is actually super nice and genuinely made the community a better place, but now they have to deal with the issues from him. He was an apple that fell very far from the tree. Story 22, freshman year of college. The guy crossed the hall from me as a spoiled rich kid from a big southern city, old money clearly coming out of his butt. A couple weeks into the second semester, he and a buddy found a checkbook on the sidewalk. Stupid jerks decided to write themselves a check and cash it in the bank that the account is in. The teller immediately called the cops and they both got arrested. We talked the night he got arrested and he laughed and said his dad would take care of it and everything would be fine. That weekend we met his dad as they moved everything out of the dorm since his dumb butt got expelled. Guess daddy didn't take care of it. Oh no. Story 23, nothing too serious, but I taught at an international school in Africa, and we would take the high school students camping 1 week out of the year. Many of these kids are not used to camping at all and have never even taken public transport. They have full-time drivers to bring them to school and pick them up. Some of them are from very wealthy and politically connected families. Having to set up tents and get dirty, not being able to shower every day and sleep on hard ground is new to them. Some of them do love it, but others are sad, pathetic wretches the entire week. Story 24. For a couple of years in high school, I went to this super expensive American private school in Switzerland. The company my dad worked for paid for almost all of the tuition, so it was an amazing opportunity for me. Most of the kids in this school were either State Department or from American families living in Saudi. Saudi provided expat kids with school up until 10th grade, so you had to go to a school abroad to finish high school. There were, however, a few Saudi kids that were there mostly so that they would be able to speak flawless English to help out their future careers. One of these kids, who I will call the prince, was somewhere in the line of Saudi succession. But honestly, he was like 1/400th in line for the throne or something. Not a real contender. But his family was rich. Like rich in a way that most of us can't even imagine. This school had some rules. Like you couldn't have a car as a student even if you were old enough to get a license. This rule was a real buzzkill for the prince. But he made it through the year somehow. Over the summer after his junior year, he drove back to the school from Geneva in his Lambo, probably just because he could do it outside the school year. On his way up the mountain, the road is like an endless series of hairpin turns. He managed to flip his Lambo into a vineyard while trying to navigate one of those hairpin turns. I'm guessing a Lambo has a lot of power, and he took it too hard. His parents, furious at what he had done, decided to punish him by replacing his Lambo with a Porsche. The prince was so angry, he complained about it bitterly when the school year started up again. The rest of us kind of just looked at each other in amazement. Same planet, different worlds, I guess. Story 25, guy from my robotics group had his entire life handed to him. His dad was stupid rich because his dad bought shares in an oil field that turned out to have 40 being the expected yield, making his $100,000 investment become around $3 million. Then he dumped that into real estate rentals. He decided it would be fun to go to a school trip in Philly acting rich as hell. He drove his lifted modded SUV to a school we were doing a robotics event at in North Philly, talking to younger kids about how it's fun and their school has started offering it. Then we're going to the Franklin Institute from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., then a Phantoms hockey game. Well, 9:30 rolls around and we leave the school to see our bus driver talking to cops. 5 kids drove themselves down. Guess which car was stolen? His $90,000 monstrosity was missing. And after 2 months, all that was ever recovered was his stereo from a pawn shop and his laptop. Best freaking part, he didn't have insurance on it yet, because he can just buy the other person's car if there's an accident. Anyway, I'd win the fight. His dad flipped out over it and cut his allowance to $200 a month and forced him to drive a beater till he saved up his own money. Story 26. One of my college roommates was very rich growing up. I didn't realize how rich until I had to explain to her what a coupon was in very extensive detail. On multiple occasions, she bragged that she wasn't even interested in her major philosophy or college in general. But she was at uni because her parents were requiring her to get a degree, any degree, in order to access her trust fund. I don't remember ever seeing her go to class, and she eventually got expelled sophomore year over academic dishonesty. I guess that was the last straw for her parents because they cut her off pretty soon after that. This actually served as a wake-up call. She somehow managed to get a public health degree at a different school in spite of the academic dishonesty listed on her transcription. She's doing pretty well for herself these days. We've kept in touch, and last we talked, she was considering grad school. Story 27, rich, scummy injury lawyer's kid was in my class in high school. Goes to college mid-sized school in the Midwest and gets plastered drunk. Parents bought him and his friends alcohol since freshman year, so nothing new. An RA says he has to write him up for alcohol in the dorms. Punches 2 RAs, then gets cops called on him and knocks a cop's tooth out. Long story short, his parents have to drive back 6 to 7 hours after one day to get him. And he's not even allowed to leave the state until his hearing. Last I heard, he's working at a fast food establishment. Story 28. This is not the best, as it's pretty sad and frankly undeserved, but a good example of the question asked. I went to a very expensive private elementary school. A friend of mine grew up very wealthy, her father a surgeon and mother a stay-at-home wife. They were very controlling of her and quite honestly a little scary. They sheltered her to the extreme, and she frequently repeated insane things they said verbatim because that was all she knew. If she was told to clean her room but left an item out upon her parents' inspection, they would throw it out no matter what. Once it was something very sentimental to her, can't remember what it was. And when she told me, I expressed sympathy. She said something like, "Oh no, it's okay, it's my fault. If I told my children to clean their rooms but they didn't, and had their friends come over, their friends would go home and tell their parents about how much of a slob my family is, and that can't happen." This was her concern at 10 years old. When it came time for college, they sent her to an expensive, hard-to-get-into school and told her that her sole purpose there was to find a husband, specifically a doctor or engineer, to keep her as a stay-at-home wife. She flat out told me this was her only purpose, which broke my heart because she is a smart person who was able to get into said school to begin with, and her parents should have been encouraging different goals for her. Well, she found a boyfriend, but at the end of her 4 years of undergrad, he turned out to be a cheating, narcissistic jerk. The narcissistic jerk part was obvious to me from the get-go, but she had no idea what a healthy relationship looked like. However, the cheating was obvious enough to be a deal breaker. So instead of going straight to marriage, which disappointed her parents, and they kicked her out of the house, she suddenly had to become solely independent, find a job in an apartment, and is doing well for herself. She's a totally different person now and has really come a long way. Story 29, I saw Justin Bieber throw a fit and end up not getting what he wanted. We have quarterly team building exercises at my company where you basically go and play mini golf or some other activity capped at $24 per person. Sometime between 2009 and 2011, I really can't remember exactly, my group just decided to go to a fancy lunch in downtown Portland. After lunch, we took one of our coworkers to the semi-famous Nike store, which was a couple of blocks away. And that was the day Justin Bieber happened to show up. When he and his entourage arrived, he said something somewhat loudly along the lines of, "Y'all are going to have to leave for a bit because I'm here to do some shopping." And some of his people acted like they were going to try and politely force the already present customers out of the store so that Bieber could shop alone. But the Nike employees even more politely told him that was not possible. At that point, Bieber lost it. I mean, threw a total temper tantrum because they couldn't shut down the store for him. The tantrum didn't work, and he and his folks left in a huff. That's really my only celebrity in the wild encounter, and it's freaking lame. Story 30, knew a rich kid whose parents bought a car for, and he treated it like absolute garbage purposefully, driving it really hard and generally abusing it, confident in the notion that his parents would buy him the one he wanted after he destroyed the one they got him. Well, they didn't buy him another one. Ever. He rode the city bus and bummed rides off of friends after that. He was the most entitled fricker I've ever met. If he was over at your house, he would just help himself to whatever was in the fridge, like it was some sort of paid buffet. Story 31, spoiled rich kid showed up to school in a $325,000 sports car. He was showing off, lost control of the car, and drove it through a brick wall and totaled it. Story 32. Here's a switch. Highly successful, local doctor, cheap politician, expects son to attend medical school and become doctor. Son opts out, gets job with new company called Costco Pumping Gas. He's been with that company ever since just his regular pay raises and bonus checks give him a good life. He just didn't want the high-stress life his dad had. Story 33. About 10 years ago, I was having a pint with a friend of mine. His family pooped gold, I swear. I mentioned I was struggling with rent and bills while in college, and he just said, "Get your mom to pay for it." Then, mate, she's disabled and we've never had real money. He instantly realized what he said and did feel bad about it. I think it was the first time he really understood that not everyone has their parents to lean on financially. Story 34. Ooh, I have one. I used to work at Starbucks, and there was a girl that was just newly hired and in training. Mind you, she was 20 years old, and her parents made her get a job. She grew up in a very wealthy family. On her first or second day, I had instructed her to do the dishes to help catch us up for closing. She looked at me with these lost eyes and told me she doesn't know how. Apparently, she grew up with housemaids and literally has never cleaned a dish in her entire life. I had to teach her step by step how to clean a dish. Story 35, rich, scummy injury lawyer's kid was in my class in high school. Goes to college mid-sized school in the Midwest and gets plastered drunk. Parents bought him and his friends alcohol since freshman year, so nothing new. And RA says he has to write him up for alcohol in the dorms. Punches 2 RAs, then gets cops called on him and knocks a cop's tooth out. Long story short, his parents have to drive back 6 to 7 hours after one day to get him, and he's not even allowed to leave the state until his hearing. Last I heard, he's working at a fast food establishment. Story 36. I used to know one who apparently couldn't fathom how people live on a budget. We used to hang out a lot at her insistence, but she liked to eat at expensive places, whereas I'd have no issue having my meals somewhere cheaper. However, she kept pouting and insisting I stay. I said I couldn't unless she wanted to spot me. She didn't. I then walked her through the math and showed her that the cost of my meals with her every day totaled my entire wage for the month. She didn't stop pouting, but from then on I could eat by myself in peace. Story 37, not a person, but a whole community. We live in a very rich school system with loads of big money parents and their cocky, do you know my dad kids. I'm one of the few who isn't. Now our baseball team has a Team A and a Team B, one which plays in an upper league and one that plays in a lower league. Me and a few of my friends who had all played since we were little played Team B like we always do. But this year, our A team was filled with the richest brats, all of whom had $700 equipment and bragged about how good they were. We won our league, and Team A placed in the bottom of theirs. Now to feel good about themselves, at least I assume they scheduled an exhibition match with us. We got badly trash talk during the whole program about how all our regular metal bats didn't even compare to their beautiful wooden ones, with their names carved in Anna's, everything like that. Our coach told us not to hold back. We didn't. Fast forward 4 innings and it's a forfeit from their coach with a score of 13-0. They've gotten 2 people on base, but other than that, it's been shutout pitching. From my brother, I'm his catcher. We had stellar batting all around, and boy, did we feel good about that retribution. Edit. My most liked post is about how I crushed some rich trash talkers. Satisfying. Story 38. I knew a kid in high school whose parents were loaded. When he got his driver's license, they bought him a $70,000 Mercedes. Within a month or two, he totaled the car while driving drunk. Parents pulled strings to get him off the full weight of the DUI. Oh, and they bought him another $70,000 Mercedes. He overdosed on a poop load of drugs and booze when he was 23. He's dead. Story 39. I knew this rich kid from high school that went off to college and partied every single night. His parents found out he was failing basically all of his classes, so they secretly drove up early one Saturday morning with the spare set of keys to the car they'd bought him and just drove off with the car. Story 40. A kid I knew won a cool million off a scratch ticket when he was 19. Acted like a big shot, arrogantly buying rounds of drinks for entire bars. Didn't do poop for 20 years, then got the last check. Alcoholic, no savings, no assets, no skills. He's now in and out of hospitals for alcohol poisoning and mental breakdowns. Lost his paper hat job, his girlfriend, everything. Story 41. A friend of mine from college whose parents were rich enough to have a multi-million-dollar home in America and in Europe used to poop on me for saying I was happy to go to whatever medical school I could get into. I ended up getting into my state school, and she responded by saying that she could get into that school in a second because her mom has connections in the admissions department, but she would never bother applying there because it's not even a good school. She also made the same claim that her mom could get her into a specific top 20 ranked school. All through college, she had this attitude with me about how, even though I was doing better than her in classes, I was going to go to whatever school would take me, and she was going to go to her dream school because that's just how the world works. I checked up on her on Facebook this year, and she's not exactly at her dream school. It turns out she is at her state medical school, which is actually significantly lower ranked than the one she was making fun of me for attending. I don't want to say I was hoping she wouldn't get in anywhere because that's a little harsh, but I was happy to see her get put in her place a little bit. Story 42, that one Instagram model who got caught on video talking poop to a security guard at VidCon. Not only did the security guard stand his ground and not let him in because he wasn't famous enough to be given a pass and too rich to just buy one, but once the internet saw the video, the guard ended up with more followers than the kid. It was more surprising that someone could be so out of touch than anything. Story 43. My boyfriend's roommate is 19 and runs a very successful online business, lives in LA, buys new clothes including $2,000 or $500 sneakers without a second thought, and despite growing up without much money is very out of touch. I was sick while visiting and he told me to visit the doctor. I don't have great insurance and was already juggling other bills, so I told him I couldn't afford it with how much I get paid at my part-time convenience store job. He asked how much I got paid. $9.80 an hour. I get paid a little under $200 every 2 weeks. He was so taken aback. This man was so surprised that I was working my butt off with school, a job, and an internship, and still lived on about $100 a week. He still bothered me about going to the doctor, but offered to help me out if I needed it. The worst part is that $9.80 is pretty good for a job at the university I attend. I was really happy with the pay. Edit. I don't live in LA, and $9.80 is well above minimum wage in my state. I live in dorms, and scholarships cover that, so $100 a week is groceries and incidentals. Not great, but definitely livable. Story 44. Classmate in college failed his course. Partied for a year with daddy's money. Never studied. Ever. Thing is inheriting his father's construction company, 2 quarries, a fleet of trucks and equipment, depended on him manning up and passing the class. All he had to do was learn the basics of mechanical diagnostic and repair and be set for life. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.